Good evening. I am Britt Bird, Senior Planner for Brooklyn Borough President Antonio Reynoso.
Good evening. I'm Tal Litwin, Planning and Policy Analyst for the Borough President.
This Uniform Land Use Review Procedure public hearing is being conducted from the Brooklyn Borough Hall courtroom on Wednesday, May 13th, 2026. Please note that this hearing is being streamed via WebEx and recorded to comply with the Open Meetings Law. The video will later be posted on the Brooklyn Borough President's YouTube channel. We have two items on the agenda this evening. Following the applicant's presentations and any questions from the chair, members of the public will be invited to testify on the applications. All comments are limited to 2 minutes. We will accept testimony tonight, both in person and virtually through WebEx. Members of the public who wish to testify in person should sign up on the sign-in sheets at the front, or rather right outside the front door to this room. Those who wish to comment via WebEx should use the raise hand function on WebEx and keep their hands raised until they have been called on and delivered testimony. If you've dialed in on a phone rather than the app, you may press *3 to raise your hand. Members of the public may also submit comments in writing to testimony@brooklynbp.nyc.gov for the Borough President's consideration until Friday, May 15th, 2026. Please call the first item.
Calendar item number 1, 862 to 868 Kent Avenue rezoning, a private application from Kent Development LLC and 123 TAF LLC seeking a zoning map amendment from M11 to M14 R6A, MX4, and a zoning text amendment to create a new mandatory inclusionary housing area, zoning resolution Appendix F, to facilitate a new 8-story, 46,356 zoning square foot residential development, including 65 units and 23 parking spaces at 862-868 Kent Avenue in the Bedford-Stuyvesant neighborhood of Community District 3. Please state your name and present this application.
Thank you for the introduction. My name is Eric Palatnik. I am an attorney and I'm representing ownership of 862 Kent Avenue, and we are very happy to be here, and we have a presentation to show you. It is a pleasure to be here to present a rezoning from an M11 district to an M14-R6A/MX4 district. This is a rezoning, I believe, that is long overdue and very deserving on this stretch of Kent Avenue, which is located between Park and Myrtle. The block is more akin to a residential block, although it has a commercial heritage. It does have a 7-story public school immediately next door to our proposal, and there's residential scattered all along the block front, as well as residential fronting along Myrtle Avenue in an R7 zoning district. The M1 is a leftover from the 1960s when active and thriving manufacturing was in the area. On the lower left, you can see the existing business that is there right now. It is in a 1-story manufacturing building. The ownership, or the lessee of the space, has been notified by ownership, and they are working together to secure another space in the area to satisfy their needs, so they will be leaving on good terms. But you can see from that picture, they're utilizing the street and the front of the building as an extension of their business, which is common for most of the smaller manufacturing businesses in New York City, but it really becomes an impediment when it's next to a public school. You can see here in the middle is the proposed zoning district. It's an extension of the R7A that's on the right-hand side that I'll show you in a second, and it would be the M14 R6A. You can see there are two development sites proposed in the zoning district. One is labeled Site A and the other is Site B. One is on Kent Avenue, that's Site A. The other is on Taffy Place. We call them buildings A and B, and they're shown to be such in the right-hand column, which shows you building A, which is a 50,000 square foot, 3.9 FAR building, and building B, which is a 13,000 square foot building. Together, they would create 75 apartments, 19 of which would be affordable, and the breakdown is there. There would be 25 parking spaces proposed. Everything I just told you is depicted here in the zoning maps. The left side is the existing, the right side is the proposed. You can see quite visibly the R7A on Myrtle Avenue, and the correct zoning for Kent and Taffy Place on the other side of that R7A, which includes an R6 district over Classen or an R6B district. We are proposing in the middle an R6A district, which would be an extension of the R7A zoning district I mentioned a moment ago. This shows you what is allowed to be built, which is what I just described, so I won't spend too much time on it. This shows you the block front from an aerial perspective. Site 1, which is Site A, which is what I spoke about a moment ago, is depicted at the bottom in a blue square. To the right of it, you could see the public school that I was speaking about before that is almost immediately adjacent to us, just a couple of doors away. You could also see all surrounding the property are residential buildings. So even though we are squarely located within an M11 zoning district, as I mentioned a moment ago, it's really a leftover from 1961, and the block is really highly residential. This is the proposal in more detail. It would create 56 apartments, 13 one-bedrooms, 36 two-bedrooms, and 7 three-bedrooms, and that's on Site 1. Site 2 would create 19 apartments, 5 studios, 8 one-bedrooms, and 6 two-bedrooms. The buildings are shown here. This gives you an idea of the height of the buildings. We're proposing here, as you can see, is consistent with heights of buildings that are around us. Everything that we've highlighted is 80 feet, 90 feet, 94 feet, 86 feet, and our building is at 94 feet. That's what it's proposed to be at. Showing you here where we are located, situated near transit. And again, this is the tax map, so just repeating. This is the neighborhood demographics. You know this better than we do, so we're not going to spend much time on it. Suffice it to say that New York City is operating at a 1.9% vacancy rate right now, which is unheard of, and I never thought I'd see in my lifetime. There is clearly not enough housing. This neighborhood has done a great job of keeping up with it. There's been a lot of development in this neighborhood, as depicted by the charter reform in bottom 12. This is not within it, but there still is a strong demand for housing. And this slide tells you the story that 40% of the population in this area has an income of below 200% of the poverty level. So the affordable housing that we're created is going to be much needed. You can see here we have the units laid out for you at 60% AMI and what the rent levels would be. Here we give you the breakdown of which units are affordable and so forth. We can come back to that if you have specific questions. This is things I spoke about a few minutes ago about the rationality for it. These are the energy efficiency inclusion within the development. Obviously, there'll be high efficiency heating and cooling and low plumbing fixtures, but will also be not solar necessarily, but we're going to start studying solar potentially. There'll be a white roof ashore. There'll be a water retention, and there'll be bioswales in the sidewalk. There'll be photovoltaic panes in the glass that helps reduce the amount of the windows. It helps reduce heat in the summer and keeps warmth in the winter. And by the time this building is built, it'll probably be a fully electric building under the new codes. The plans are pretty much what you would expect from everything I just described. I'll go through for a second here so you could see. This is the parking at the cellar level. There's a ramp down. There'll be one curb cut. This is the first floor. There'll be recreation space up on the first floor, and there'll be a gym recreation space on the first floor. And then the apartments laid out above. So pretty much just what you would expect. And that concludes our presentation. I know there were some questions that you may have had. I'll be happy to have you ask of me, and we'll be happy to provide any answers we can provide. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Yeah, just a few questions. Can you speak to any discussion or concerns raised at the community board?
Sure. We spent quite a bit of time meeting with Community Planning Board 3 over the past 2 years. I think we've met with them 2 or 3 times. Their concerns were voiced clearly at the last meeting, which is that there be a community preference set aside for local Community Board 3 members for the affordable housing. That was perhaps the single most biggest item discussed. Throughout the duration of the presentations, we simply discussed what we just discussed here and the materialism of the buildings, how they will be clad, and the heights of the buildings.
Was there a particular preference expressed for the materials and cladding?
They liked the brickwork that we showed, and that's why we depicted it. but nothing was memorialized on that. It was just a discussion.
Has the applicant considered a ground floor manufacturing use as would be permitted under the proposed MX zoning?
Right now, anything is possible. We have been approached by some local community facility organizations that might want to use the space, some community groups that might have an interest in the space. So originally, when we did map it, it has an MX district on it, which could keep open commercial use there. But we're keeping options open as people approach us.
And has the applicant engaged at all with the neighboring school on the block?
There's a applicant, the property is now, and I should have mentioned this earlier, in the process of being transferred from the original owner to a local well-known developer. The developer that's pushing it is named Heartfelt, and they are eager to, and local, and actually one of the owners lives around the corner within the rezoning area. And he is going to be meeting with the school. He's been the one that's been communicating with the lessee of the space at 862 Kent, and his next discussion is going to be with the school. The original applicant was a longtime owner. It was the son of the original owner who had passed away in the midst of COVID. So the relationships with surrounding property owners were really borne by the father who passed away. So the current contract vendee is ensuring that those relationships continue.
You mentioned there will be one curb cut under the proposed construction. How does this compare to the existing curb cuts on site? And if there is going to be an elimination of sub curb cuts, has the applicant explored the possibility for additional street trees or other street furniture?
We'd be happy to do both, attend to both. There is only going to be one curb cut. It's going to be a substantial reduction of curbside activity as I depicted in the photographs a few moments ago, and we'd be happy to work with you on that.
Any questions? Okay, thank you. This panel is now excused.
Thank you.
We will now call for testimony on this application from members of the public in attendance and online tonight. Please note that all comments are limited to 2 minutes.
Seeing as no members of the public signed up to speak, is there anyone here who didn't sign up who would like to give testimony? Seeing no one, is there anyone online that would like to give testimony? If so, you can use the raise hand function. Okay. Hearing no further comment, this item is now closed.
Great. Now please call the second item.
Calendar item number 2, Park Avenue Brooklyn rezoning. A private application from Park Avenue Rezoning Partners LLC seeking a zoning map amendment from M11 to M12 to R7D/M14 and R61/M14/MX, and a zoning text amendment to Appendix F to map an MIH area to facilitate new community facility and residential developments with approximately 391 dwelling units and 244,088 square feet of educational facilities along Park Avenue in the Bed-Stuy neighborhood of Community District 3. Please state your name and present this application.
Hi, thank you. Good afternoon, good evening. Really appreciate the opportunity to present this really important application. My name is Ben Stark. I'm a land use attorney at Hirsch & Singer Epstein for the applicant, Park Avenue Rezoning Partners. This application seeks to rezone a legacy manufacturing area of Brooklyn Community Board 3 in order to convert legacy M zoning in order to facilitate mid-rise affordable housing and market rate development, together with the development of a number of new educational facilities. And that's really at the heart of this application. This is a really unique rezoning initiative. It is not led by a singular developer. This is really a true community development proposal. Park Avenue Rezoning Partners is a consortium of property owners addressing 2 urgent challenges. a critical shortage of school seats, and a severe affordable housing crisis within the area. The driving force behind this effort is a group of educational institutions serving this community for decades: the Beth Chana School, Central United Talmudic Academy, Yeshiva Chavas Israel, and Yeshiva Tzirim Satmar. These organizations are the focal point of many families' educational, social, and spiritual life, and they've grown alongside this community but face a common problem. They need space. At the same time, this rapidly growing community faces a housing crisis, challenging young families' ability to remain in the borough. The Park Avenue rezoning responds to both concerns without displacing existing residents, while offering opportunity for neighborhood-serving businesses to expand in modern retail spaces. And through improving the Park Avenue corridor, we will link existing residential communities together. If approved, this application will deliver over 2,500 new school seats across 4 facilities, approximately 391 dwelling units, including anywhere from 98 to approximately 117 permanently income-restricted units under MIH's option 1 or 2, and all within the inner transit zone on a 70-foot wide corridor functioning as a neighborhood, as the heart of a growing residential neighborhood. Let's step back for a moment and establish where we are in the borough. This project area straddles Park Avenue between Bedford to the west, Sanford to the east. We're south of Flushing Avenue and north of Myrtle, and you can see it up there in the upper left-hand corner shaded in red. We're in the inner transit zone with excellent bus service and with the G train nearby at Flushing Avenue together with the Myrtle Willoughby station. Under the zoning resolution, no parking is required for residential development here. This is a transit-rich location where density is appropriate. The planning context is unique. We sit between residential districts created both by prior city rezonings, a 2001 Flushing Bedford rezoning to the west, and an existing residential districts to the east and south, dominated by the Marcy houses there that you can see in yellow. We are through the rezoning, the Park Avenue rezoning, we are going to complete a neighborhood context that the city began 25 years ago with that Flushing Bedford rezoning. The existing conditions have evolved in that time. This area is no longer functioning purely as a manufacturing corridor. It's functioning as a transition zone, serving the solidified residential neighborhoods around it. Park Avenue today is lined with retail that serves its local residents: pharmacies, bakeries, and supply stores. The side streets include lands owned by the school-owning applicants, houses of worship, and other community facilities. The M1 zoning is a remnant of 1961 that no longer reflects what is happening on the ground and no longer reflects community planning needs. What we're proposing is zoning that reflects that reality and facilitates well-considered growth. We didn't arrive at this application in a vacuum. I had mentioned that the project area sits in a community experiencing rapid population growth. That growth is most pronounced among young people, amongst school-age population. In this community, a large percentage of children attend private religious schools, and many families have 6 to 10 or more children. The need for schools is growing exponentially. The educational institutions who make up the applicant consortium spend significant time engaging with the community to understand the depth of this challenge. We've had conversations with families struggling to find school placements for their children. We've spoken with local rabbis and community leaders who see the strain firsthand. Parents coming to them desperate for options, siblings unable to attend the same school because of capacity constraints, and families facing multi-year wait lists. Later in this hearing, you'll be hearing directly from a mother in the community who will speak to these challenges from a lived experience. Her testimony will put a human face on the data I'm presenting. As we previously introduced, the families that in this community that are struggling to find private religious school seats are similarly struggling to find quality, affordable housing. The city's affordable housing crisis challenges are well documented and need no introduction, but at the community level, the problem is severe. Over half of Community District 3's residents are rent burdened, paying more than 30% of their income on rent. A third are severely rent burdened, paying over 50% of their gross monthly income on rent. It's no exaggeration to say that every year families in this community are leaving the city because they cannot find housing that meets their needs from an affordability and quality of life standpoint. And this isn't static, it's getting worse. Housing production in CD3 is not keeping pace with population increases. The Park Avenue rezoning will address both these challenges with a comprehensive planning framework that will, one, see the legalization of existing educational uses and the development of new sorely needed educational facilities. And the new residential MX zoning will permit this school development as of right on its mid-block sites which have the lot sizes to accommodate the school facilities appropriately. This will unlock nearly 250,000 square feet of educational space and over 2,500 school seats. Second, the application will see the development of the new housing. Like I said, up nearly 400 new dwelling units, anywhere from 98 to approximately 117 of which would be permanently affordable under MIH. What we're proposing is fundamentally different from the piecemeal approach that's been the only option available to date with respect to school development. Without a rezoning, each school would need to pursue site-specific individual BSA variances or special permits, separate applications having separate hearings and separate findings, uncertain outcomes, and years of process. And on the housing side, there would be no ability to build residential under the current M1 zoning. You can see the 4 proposed school sites here marked. There's an important point about existing conditions. These educational institutions are already holding ownership of these sites, and in some respect are operating as a quasi-religious use. Central United Talmudic Academy currently operates at 84 Sanford under its BSA variance granted about 17 years ago. Others, as I said, are operating as a mix of house of worship and quasi-educational use, waiting for resolution of this matter. The positioning of these schools is really not by accident. The existing manufacturing zoning has afforded the types of sites that are needed to develop schools. We see this problem throughout the city nearly continuously. It is incredibly challenging to site schools given the competition with residential developers in a city that is by and large already built out. The former industrial areas are where we find the floor plates of 7,500, 10,000 or more square feet that is needed to develop basically the gymnasiums that accompany these types of schools. So the Park Avenue rezoning, shown up here on the screen, would see the placement of mid-rise mixed use districts centered with an R7D district running along Park Avenue and flanked by mid-rise R61 residential districts, also paired with an underlying manufacturing district along the side streets. This is a classic wedding cake density framework with greater FAR permitted along Park Avenue that tiers down to a lesser amount of FAR along the side streets in line with the narrow street widths. As I had mentioned, the proposed changes here are in line with existing conditions. The land use map up on the screen is not an outgrowth of Pluto. This is an outgrowth of an actual site-specific analysis of ownership conditions and active uses. What you'll see is in the rezoning area, the amount of active industrial use is quite limited. Most of these sites are currently being operated, again, as either quasi-religious use or as a retail use serving the residential neighborhoods that exist to the west and to the east. These existing residential areas are more prominently shown on this slide, highlighted in yellow. And again, the mapping of the Park Avenue rezoning would serve to create linkage between these existing communities and offering new modern retail space for the existing businesses within the rezoning area to return and for others to fill out within the new buildings. I want to go through a few existing condition slides here just to give a sense of the juxtaposition of the rezoning area with the existing community that currently runs up against it to the west, together with the existing community to the east, the Marcy houses. You can see here that the legacy manufacturing zoning is really pronounced. The low-rise character immediately giving way to the new developments that came out of the Bedford Flushing rezoning immediately to the west. Those are the red brick buildings on the upper left-hand corner, together with the Marcy houses there on the bottom right. This is the same view as we look up Park Avenue towards the demarcation line between the existing M zoning and the residential community to the west. The developments that filled out that Bloomberg era rezoning are in the background there. And the street condition is shown quite clearly here. This is, by all accounts, a connecting thoroughfare that that stands to be improved and better serving its surrounding community. I've now moved to a side street location on the western edge of the rezoning. You can see the quasi-residential uses or quasi-house of worship uses have already started to come in, reflecting the ownership conditions. And finally, showing the new schools proposed for each of the 4 school sites. The first school that's proposed is the Beth Chana School. This will be a 5-story high school for girls. This is on Spencer Street, just north of Park. Its current condition is parking, quasi-industrial, underutilized. Beth Chana School is been in the neighborhood for decades. They operate existing facilities at 620 Bedford Avenue, 712 Bedford Avenue. They have a combined enrollment of nearly 1,000 students, but a wait list approaching 100. They need more space, and the proposed girls' school on Spencer Street will help alleviate some of that demand. All of the schools, as you're going to see here, have a common design. In order to keep costs down, no setbacks are provided. These would be 5-story buildings rising with straight street walls. This is not by accident. This is being done to preserve as much roof area as possible for active open spaces for the kids. Each school has this component. Further, in order to ensure for safe queuing and drop off and pickup period, each school is proposed to set back voluntarily 5 feet from the street line, and then in their entryways to set back further. This will make sure that during drop off and pickup times, kids aren't spilling out completely to the street line, and they'll have room to queue at when school gets out. Moving south of Park Avenue to the Central United Talmudic Academy, similar new 5-story buildings, maximizing their active roof space. And again, an existing condition that is not reflective of the needs of these school facilities. Central United, very similar. They've been in the neighborhood for many decades. They operate numerous schools throughout South Williamsburg, including their main campus on Wythe. The new facility, like Beth Chana School, will be set back 5 feet from the street line on both its Sanford and Waller frontages. Additional setbacks would be provided at the entryways for proper queuing. And finally, Yeshiva, among the new schools, Yeshiva Chavas Israel. This is the smallest of the schools, similar, 5 stories, no setback, providing an active roof area or an active play area on the roof. Like the others, set back 5 feet voluntarily from the street line with further setbacks at the entryways in order to ensure safe queuing during drop off and pickup. The positioning of these schools is really, I would say, well designed, perhaps a wonderful accident. It's hard to acquire properties, but the operators here managed to acquire properties, although separate institutions, directly adjacent to one another. We see this on prior images. Central United site is immediately across the street from Chavas Israel's. Beth Chana's is right across the street from Satmar Tzirim. This is a happy condition insofar as the schools can better coordinate during the queuing periods, during drop-off and pickup. As we'll discuss a little later, the schools have worked with the Department of Transportation to adopt a school loading and management plan that will see the removal of some amount of alternate side parking immediately adjacent to the schools in order for the buses to have a loading zone. That loading zone, together with an operational plan that they'll all share, will again ensure as safe of a condition as possible during drop-off and pickup. Last site here, this is not a new development. This is the one conversion site Litzirum Satmar has been operating out of a former industrial building, and no new schools proposed here, but the idea is to finalize the certificate of occupancy necessary to operate this in accordance with all underlying regs. Moving to the housing component, which is significant, but which will tie this whole development proposal together. 6 new developments, each running along Park Avenue, totaling approximately 391 new units, 98 to 117 of which would be income restricted pursuant to MIH, and each developed with new ground floor retail space. Ground floor retail space is of the existing buildings in the rezoning area already serving the local community. The goal is to bring as many back as possible within the new spaces. These buildings are mid-rise in character, extending anywhere from 7 to 11 stories, reflecting the proposed underlying R7D zoning. We're working with Councilmember Ressler to determine where we'll go from an MIH optionality standpoint. But as of this time, both option 1 and option 2 are part of the application. I'm going to conclude here with just a few shots of Park Avenue itself. This is on Spencer Street and Park. This would be one of the residential sites. And then as we move east along Park, you give a sense of the local retail that has come in within these former industrial buildings. And finally, we'll conclude with a shot, again, up Park Avenue and what we hope to fill out should this application be able to move forward. Appreciate the opportunity, and we're here to answer any questions that you have.
Thank you for the presentation. Yes, a few questions. First, a clarifying question. You mentioned a few times quasi-religious use. Can you expand or elaborate on what you mean by quasi in this context?
Well, just in that the schools can't operate legally within the rezoning area, but the need is so acute and the pathways to entitlement go beyond a rezoning. To the extent that this rezoning was to not move forward, there's optionality under BSA variants to try to entitle the schools. So in the interim, the schools are using their sites. I mean, is there active educational instruction? Not to the degree that would be appropriate because it's not a school, but these are buildings owned by schools right now, and so some amount of religious use is occurring.
Got it. Thank you for clarifying. Can you speak to any discussion or concerns raised at the community board?
Yes. So a number of concerns were raised at the community board. I would say, just kind of going through a list, there was questions raised about fairness in the selection process for MIH the affordable housing units coming out of MIH. And we responded to that by noting HPD's role in selecting tenants for MIH units. There were questions raised or concerns raised about congestion caused by the buses that would serve some of these schools. And we responded by clarifying that only 2 of the 4 schools are proposed to have buses. That would be Central United and Havis Israel, the 2 schools that are on the southern side of the rezoning area, and tried to assuage the community's concerns that through the adoption of bus loading zones adjacent to these schools, through a coordinated operations plan that we've worked on with DOT, that we can cut down as much as practically possible on conflicts and traffic-related concerns. Although, admittedly, it is something that will be part of this process and something that we'll have to continue to work through should these buildings be able to move forward. Other concerns included where the school buses would park. It's a concern that we're taking to heart, and it's something that we're going to work on with each of the constituent members of each of the educational institutions that propose the buses, to ensure that buses are parked during off hours in such a manner as to preserve parking for residents in the community and to ensure that no conflicts with pedestrian thoroughfares. Finally, there are questions regarding just generally the community benefit of the proposed schools and housing. Really, who would benefit from these initiatives? And our response was the same every time this question came up, and is that these are proposed schools that will serve over 2,500 school seats. If you can't see the community benefit of that, it's hard to convince people. It's clear to us that this is very much a community serving project.
Okay, so on the subject of the loading plan, you mentioned a bit already. The applicant has worked with the Department of Transportation on some loading concepts. Can you elaborate a bit? Would this be governed by loading zone signage and enforcement? And when you mention coordinated operation with DOT, what does that look like?
Yes. So in order to adopt these loading zones, there will have to be some removal, alternate side parking. These are commitments that I should bundle it all together. In order to adopt the loading zones, we have to change signage. These will be true signed loading zones, and therefore there will not be alternate side parking within the loading zones. In order to do so, the applicant themselves has to work with DOT, make financial commitments to change out that signage. We understand that the loss of alternate side parking is a challenge for the immediate community. We're at least somewhat heartened by the existing condition being one of a number of legacy curb cuts. So there's actually like a ton of curb cuts where the loading zones just coincidentally had to be. And so the number of alternate side parking spaces that are going to be removed here is less than it otherwise would be. But sort of to put a button on your question, yes, this is not, these loading zones can only be done in close coordination with DOT, given the change in the streets that are under their jurisdiction.
Got it. And so seeing as the loading zone signage relies on enforcement in order to clear the curb space for proper signed usage, and enforcement has been a pain point across the city historically, has there been any discussion when engaging with DOT about potential design solutions, anything from their toolbox, from their school streets program that could perhaps take a preemptive approach to clearing the curb space rather than relying on enforcement measures for the signage?
Not anything novel. I was part of many of the conversations with DOT, and I can't recall there being a novel approach to the designs of the loading zones. I will say that extensive conversations with DOT played out as to additional measures within proximity of the school to ensure that the students could queue safely. That was you saw me mention that earlier in the presentation. That's the major reason why each of these schools has agreed to set themselves back 5 feet across the full frontage of the schools, and then to set back an additional five or so feet for the actual entryways. So those will be these entryways that I'm sure New Yorkers are familiar with, where you're sort of stepping towards the front door and the second story of the building is going to be cantilevered over your head a little bit. But that's going to ensure that when kids come in and out of the buildings, that there's more than enough space to not have people be bumped into the roadway or what have you.
And has there been any engagement or conversation between the applicants and relevant partners to explore sidewalk conditions and sidewalk widening for pedestrian infrastructure in the surrounding area and potential incremental impacts on sidewalk conditions?
This has been an extensive conversation with DOT. The seeker studies associated with this application picked up early that this neighborhood admittedly has narrow sidewalks. I mean, this is getting back to the school's commitment to setting back and to having the entryway set back further. Somewhat interestingly, those impacts related to sidewalk width are pronounced in areas well beyond the rezoning area. So the intersections that were tripped on this were actually mostly on Flushing Avenue. That's over 1,000 feet away. This is, from the perspective of the applicant, these are pre-existing conditions. The sidewalks on Flushing Avenue, nearly a quarter mile away from this rezoning area, are narrow today. They're going to be narrow tomorrow. And as of right development comes in, that's exacerbating the problem, whether appropriately or not. It's just the reality. So the position of the applicant here is that we can control what we can control from a practical standpoint within the rezoning area, but that sidewalk widenings a quarter mile away that would necessarily cost, by some estimates, millions of dollars, is not something that a handful of nonprofits could accommodate on their own, together with the residential site owners who have, in a sense, sort of mid-size developments that likely would have screened out of any traffic study should these have been single site rezonings like the one we just saw earlier tonight. So this is something that the applicant has to continue working with DOT. I mean, we've proposed all sorts of additional measures like moving tree pits to other locations, tree guards that would allow pedestrians to walk across a more fuller width of the sidewalk, repositioning of street furniture. All of this is on the table, and it's our responsibility to continue to work with DOT to find the best option possible.
Mm-hmm. And has there been any discussion or any thinking about the school playgrounds and whether they could be considered accessible for public use during non-school hours, such as in the jointly operated program, playground program run by parks and schools?
We have not had conversations with the Parks Department about making the school playgrounds publicly accessible. That presents a number of challenges from a security standpoint, given that these playgrounds are going to be on the roof. They're not at grade level. So, I mean, sort of where do we begin as far as how do you get access up there for public use? How do you control access? There's a particular expense to that kind of things. There's a big liability question to that kind of framework. It's something that we understand it can be appropriate for public schools, but have not considered that given the private nature of these institutions.
And then, you've mentioned, the neighborhood and sort of borough-wide regional considerations throughout a few times. And, given the size of the proposed rezoning area and these sort of looming larger area questions, has there been any consideration or conversation about this being a public-led neighborhood plan rather than a private application?
Thank you for that question. It's something that we wish was put on the table for us as an applicant. As I'm sure you're familiar, the rezoning process is an uncertain one. It's an expensive one. That's a decision that would have had to come out of the city. This applicant team has been working with this city on this rezoning from an explicit standpoint for 5 years. But the history of this project goes back much further than that, as the demographic dynamics started to come into view. And Central United in particular, after they had obtained their BSA variance in 2008, pretty quickly saw that the continued development of the neighborhood to the west there, following the Bloomberg era rezoning, was going to yield a tidal wave of demand. And so they've, in particular, been seeking pathways to entitling redevelopment for quite a while. Early conversations with city planning, this is pre-COVID, centered on the challenge of Central United establishing a land use rationale for what would have been a rezoning sort of on an island surrounded by M zoning. So it was through those constructive conversations with city planning that a land use rationale started to take shape as the schools got into contact with one another, as local community leaders and rabbis began to sort of knit together these connections and to realize that there was a common challenge and that there could be a common solution. And sort of through that, it started to crystallize that as a unit, the land use rationale wasn't just there. It really, the merits sort of spoke to itself as a uniform project. Somewhere along there, we would have loved for the city to say that this is a neighborhood rezoning that is our responsibility to prosecute. That conversation never happened, but we as an applicant team continue to believe that what we're doing is a community rezoning that of deep public import. So you know, we appreciate the question and hope that stakeholders view it in that same way that we do.
Okay, thank you. This panel is now excused.
Thank you so much.
We will now call for testimony on this application from members of the public in attendance and online tonight. Please note that all comments are limited to 2 minutes.
So starting with people who signed in to speak, Rivka Friedman can go to the podium. Yeah.
Good evening. Thanks for the opportunity. I'm addressing the Borough President and his staff. My name is Rivka Friedman. I'm a mother and a grandmother of 8 children, and 3 of who attend the Central United Medical Academy today. I want to start by saying something very simple. We are community people. We live here. We want to stay here. I love this school. The teachers are dedicated. The values they instill in our children are ones I hold dear, and it is one of the hearts of our community. I'm representing thousands of mothers who would have said the same thing. And as it is happening now, my grandchildren, my siblings' children, we cannot anymore have new attendees to this school because of the overcrowdedness that is happening. The classrooms are packed, the hallways are crowded. The school has such a shortage of space that it has become impossibly competitive to attend, and they cannot provide an education to all who wish to study here. It is not a criticism of the administration. They are doing everything they can with what they have. It's just that our community has grown beyond what their existing facilities and capacity can safely and adequately serve. My children, our grandchildren deserve a real school, not a workaround, a building designed for them with proper classrooms, space to move, room to breathe, and facilities that meet 21st century educational standards. The proposed new central UTA building, 5 stories high, would be that school. It will serve over 1,000 students, 1,000 children whose parents are sitting in living rooms and kitchens tonight, hoping that our borough president and his staff can vote yes for this proposal. I thank you for your time, and I appreciate and I hope that you can support the Park Avenue rezoning. Thank you.
Thank you. Malka Yegar?
Good evening. My name is Malka Unger. I'm a mother and a grandmother too of 8 children and I'm a mother of the children in the community in this school. I would like to elaborate on the needs of our community. It is vital for every child to have adequate space in school with facilities equipped to educate all children. This is especially critical for children with special needs, many of whom require additional space for gyms, physical therapy, and one-on-one services. Furthermore, it is important for every child to have sufficient space at home to sleep, study, and play with family and friends, and therefore, the residential units are just as important. The proposed rezoning will address both of these issues. We appreciate your time and efforts in supporting the local community. We look forward to a positive outcome tonight for this much-needed rezoning. Thank you for your time.
Last name here is Weiss, I believe.
Good evening. Good evening. My name is Yoel Weiss. I'm the director of the Central United Theological School, and I'm here to ask that the Borough President should approve this application. We need the space not just for seats, but the way we are now crowded in the school, and there's no facilities for anything extracurriculum for the children, which affects them very much. They don't get the educational and the space they deserve. Not just playground space, but any performances to get out their talents and their movements. Spaces being shared, performances and certain programs are being canceled because of lack of space. There is no real playground space for them to play around, and this affects their upbringing and their child. There is another thing which also gets affected by space, which is childcare. We cannot provide childcare for the staff, so some of our staff have to travel in order to be able to educate the children. They have to travel a few blocks to find a place where to leave the children. This will give us the opportunity to provide them childcare on site. Not just our school, obviously. There are several other schools which would get advantage of this rezoning. I ask the Borough President and his staff to please approve it. Thank you. Have a great day.
Thank you. David Nieberman.
Good evening. And let me thank you for the opportunity to testify tonight. My name is Rabbi David Niederman. I'm the president of the United Jewish Organizations of Williamsburg and North Brooklyn. I want to thank the borough president and his staff for strongly supporting housing development, which is such a shortage. And it's not easy to support pro-development, but he understands the needs. Looking around the borough, and real estate is at a premium, and therefore we thank him for looking and understanding and feeling the need for additional housing. We deeply appreciate that. We really sat down with this project that originated many years ago, and for the last few years, our board, stakeholders in the community sat around the table to design an opportunity for our generations, our children and grandchildren, to have two things. One is to have a roof over the top of their head that they can call home, and as stated before by the mother so eloquently, that they can do their homework, play, and have recreation. And the other thing, to have a school that meets the needs of what the children need, and especially there's always a ratio of children that need special education, and that needs more space. So this application really has both aspects of school It's for the schools. Teachers have a place where they can prepare and they can come into school and present the lessons the way they want, and children to understand and learn, and as well the housing. And let me say, we are not talking about the luxury housing. We are talking about the low end of market rate housing, which does not exist. And in addition to that, we're also addressing the terrible need of affordable housing. Both of those housing needs are presented in this application, and we respectfully ask that to look at the locations. The location has been for years been places where there's decline in manufacturing, narrow streets, there's no outlook for even for having industry, surrounded by existing housing. And therefore, to take that precious land and make out of that something that will benefit the entire community and communities. The housing, the affordable housing is a lottery that every family can apply and will apply. So this meets the needs of the communities that live in the neighborhood, and we respectfully present that we look forward for the approval. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Seeing no one else signed up for testimony, is there anyone else in attendance that would like to testify? Seeing no one else, is there anyone online that would like to testify? If so, use the raise hand function. And seeing no one online.
Give it a second. Sometimes it takes people. Okay, last call for folks wishing to testify. Can use the raise hand function or press *3 on the phone. Okay, we're good.
Hearing no further comment, this item is now closed.
With the end of this agenda item, this ULURP public hearing is now closed. The Borough President will review these applications, and submit his recommendations to the City Planning Commission, which will hold its hearing on these items at a later date. As a reminder, members of the public may submit comments to testimony@brooklynbp.nyc.gov for the Borough President's consideration until the end of Friday, May 15th, 2026. This meeting is now adjourned.